With thousands of Afghan refugees now relocating around the world, including right here in the U.S., we wanted to look at the vetting process as they arrive. So I'm joined now by Elizabeth Neumann, former Assistant Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security and an ABC News contributor. Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me, Lindsay.
So you oversaw vetting policy during your tenure at DHS in the Trump administration. Explain what actually happens when a special immigrant visa applicant or refugee wants to come to the United States. How extensive is the background check into each individual who's been approved to come here?
Well, it's quite extensive, and the process has been refined over the last decade, even the last 4 years during the Trump administration, further enhanced. And the good news is that the process that they're going to be using, or that they are using, has the benefit of those enhancements from the last 4 years, including making sure that when somebody applies to come for that immigrant visa, that we're checking both biographic databases as well as biometric databases. So the biographic would be things like checking name and date of birth to see if there's any information in any of our holdings, the FBI, the intelligence community, that would indicate that this individual has committed a serious crime or has some known association with a terrorist group. Those would all be reasons why we're not allowing you to come into our country. But the biometrics is equally important because people can try to change their identity, try to change their names. So biometrics don't lie. Facial biometrics, fingerprint biometrics, all of those are really important to verify identity and detect if an individual has some sort of association, perhaps with bomb-making material where we picked up a fingerprint.
And the administration has said that there is a stringent vetting process in place when it comes to processing Afghan refugees. Would the government have had to lift any of those safeguards that were previously in place in order to process this sudden surge in refugees?
You know, I was very concerned about that last week because clearly this is a lot more individuals than we usually process in a given week. But I've been having some conversations, and I feel very comfortable with the information that has come out, that they are, in fact, doing all due diligence. They're checking all of the important databases, and they're checking the terrorist watch list. So any individual that is making their way to the United States has gone through the same process that we would have gone through, put somebody through if they were applying through normal circumstances for that SIV or refugee status. We're just doing it much faster and a little out of order than the normal way that we use those SIV or refugee processes.
Are you able to explain at all why the eligible Afghan applicants weren't processed earlier, before this crisis in Afghanistan escalated?
I mean, that's the $100 million question, and I think once we get through this crisis, there should be a strong look at why proper planning was not implemented. I know that there were many in the vetting community raising concerns last year, knowing that Trump wanted to draw down troops, and then raise those concerns during the transition, raise those concerns early in the Biden administration. So clearly something went wrong there. The vetting community recognized that we would need time to do this well, and for whatever reason, just a decision was made to move forward without implementing that planning early enough in the process. Certainly, there are any number of ways in which this could have been done much better.
Former President Trump issued a statement today claiming President Biden is letting terrorists into the country. What are the facts here? Is there a threat of bad actors coming into the United States through this refugee resettlement?
No, not at all. In fact, I actually really dug into that issue during my tenure at DHS because that was one of his executive orders, was to strengthen the refugee system. And I came away from that process realizing that we do more to vet refugees than we do for any other category of immigrant coming to the United States. And they're using that same process to make sure that any individual coming to the United States as a part of this evacuation process is who they say they are, and they do not pose a threat to the United States. Now look, the real threat here is the fear-mongering that a statement like former President Trump makes, and the incitement to violence that we have seen in the past when you have individuals with large platforms claiming that terrorists are entering the country. We have seen evidence that such language usually results in increases in hate crime and increases in violence against those targeted communities. All of the social studies done over 30, 40 years of processing refugees into this country, bringing in immigrants into this country, show that immigrants and refugees they actually have lower crime rates than the average American. So it's not the refugees that are posing the risk. It's actually Americans that are fear-driven and targeting hate towards refugee communities or towards immigrant communities, where we're more likely to see potential crime. So it's really sad, and it's really important for all political leaders who may have a legitimate disagreement about the way in which this process is happening to be careful with your language. We shouldn't target fear and hate towards the Afghan people that are being resettled here. They should be welcomed. And then take your political debate and focus it in the proper political channels. But let's not incite further violence and damage to this country.
And I know that you just cited fear-mongering as an issue. I'm curious, as a former top Homeland Security official, what also concerns you as you're watching the situation unfold in Afghanistan?
Well, certainly we are creating instability in that region, besides all of the horrific things that Ian reported that are likely to happen to many people that were our allies for 20 years. It allows ISIS-K to have a safe haven to operate. It allows parts of Al-Qaeda to have a safe haven to operate. There were a number of Al-Qaeda prisoners that were released a few weeks ago. These were not the types of people we want on the street. Many of them had external operations capabilities, meaning they planned attacks outside of Afghanistan. So I am concerned about that in kind of the medium to long term. But honestly, the biggest threat that we're facing right now as a country truly is that domestic violent extremist threat. And the online chatter that we're seeing related to Afghanistan, we're seeing a whole mix of different grievances come together. And Americans need to remain vigilant. They need to see something, say something. If somebody is hurting or in need, we need to get them help before they cross a criminal threshold and decide to commit an act of violence. And hopefully leaders across the country, I've seen some amazing statements put out by governors that are welcoming refugees. That's so important to demonstrate. We truly are an amazingly blessed society that also is amazingly warm and welcome, and let's put that into action. It's been a tough year for all of us with COVID, but I can't imagine the trauma that the individuals coming from Afghanistan have incurred, and surely all of us, can choose to welcome them, and that's actually the best thing that we can do to keep our country safe.
Elizabeth Neumann, we thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.